There's been a number of 80s horror movies that have tried to reboot their franchises in the last 10 to 20 years. Some, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, have done a pretty good job, while others, like the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street franchises, have fallen pretty flat. Now, the Halloween franchise surely ranks up there with the other horror franchises from the 1980s, boasting an iconic villain in Michael Myers and having a large number of sequels really through the 80s, 90s, and even 2000s. Now, in 2018, wanting to disassociate themselves from the other Halloween sequels, the Halloween franchise decided to launch Halloween 2018, a direct sequel to the first movie. The movie centers around Laurie Strode, played once again by Jamie Curtis. Strode has spent the last 40 years since the events in the first film, prepping and preparing and psychotically being paranoid about Michael Myers returning, even though he is locked away for life. Strode hasn't been able to move on from the events of that night, and it's led to her daughter becoming estranged and rocky family relationships. Now, while prior sequels have taken a different route as far as Strode and how she moved on with her life, this film really spent a good amount of time showing how she's never really been able to move on from the events of that Halloween on 1978. Now, eventually in the movie, we see Myers escape from the mental institution as he's coincidentally being transferred to another one on Halloween Eve. And after several kills, Myers comes after Strobe's daughter, and Strobe's granddaughter. Now, overall, I thought this movie was good and surely one of the better Halloween sequels that I've seen. It had some good kill scenes, good pacing. It was just a fun slasher movie to watch overall. That said, the movie did have several things that I want to point out I didn't like. One is that Michael Myers, despite being in his 60s at least, seems incredibly well adapted to modern society and also seems to have these superhuman abilities. Now, for example, he gets hit by a cop car going 30 miles per hour, and just in a little bit of time, he's able to get up without any sort of issue. Now, this is, of course, completely unrealistic, and you expect this a little bit in these types of movies, but I thought the writers could have done something a little bit more clever here to incapacitate him. Also, Michael Myers, he's able to kill a teenage boy, and by all accounts, this boy looks like he's probably about 200 pounds. He's able to stab him into the face and then just lift him off the floor. That would be something very difficult for someone who's not young and strong to be able to do. Now, one other thing I wanted to point out is Strode. She spent her whole life training and really being prepared, but it seems like, to me, dare I say, she seems a little unprepared actually for when he actually arrived. Now, she has some things that are good. She's got the floodlights up. She's got the escape room or in her cellar, but most of her plan revolves around trapping Michael in that room. But it really doesn't make sense when you think about it. First, they go in there. Strode goes in there with her daughter and her granddaughter, but Myers finds out about the hideout anyway, and I'm not really clear what the plan was. I understand that she had that gas that came out that lit him on fire, and that was the concept, but they're using themselves as bait ultimately. And then what are they supposed to do? There's only one way in and one way out. So they have to essentially run up the stairs, hope that he doesn't, slash one of them or get one of them. There's so many things they could have done here instead. They could have she could have put in a second escape route that's hidden, and they could have trapped him in there and then lit him on fire. Personally, I would have gone with a different plan altogether. That way I wouldn't have had to burn down my whole house. I have to point out too, she's killed Myers, but she's lost everything in her home, and she's probably not going to get any insurance since she, it's going to be obviously arson that she did it herself. Maybe she could claim that it was the only way to save her life. So the ending of the movie was a little bit discouraging. Somehow Myers, we find out later, is able to survive being trapped in this burning basement, and once again, this speaks to his inhuman abilities. All this said, I thought this should have been the last one. here, especially with Jamie Lee Curtis. I know she's done a couple other ones too, but this one would have been a good way to wrap it up for her and her story. The fact is, Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, they were both much worse, and this movie was pretty good overall. I thought this would have been a good way to end the story. There's no easy way to do it when you've got such a classic in the original, but Halloween Ends is definitely not the route you want to pick in terms of ending this franchise with her.